Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Smith College Alumni Webinar Series. My name is Lindsay McGrath. I'm an Events and Communications Specialist in the Office of Alumni and Donor Relations, and wanted to welcome you here today. Thank you for joining us to learn about writing into our joy. Before I introduce today's speaker, I just want to go over a few housekeeping notes for everyone. Everyone is muted to keep background noise at bay, but I encourage you to join the conversation and ask questions, engage with Melanie through the chat box. And if you feel comfortable, I would encourage you to select sending your question to all panelists and attendees. It's not the default, but that allows everybody to see the good questions asked, and it might encourage conversation or jog someone's memory of a question they might want to ask. So I'd encourage you to do that as well. Today's presentation is being recorded and will be shared on the Smith College YouTube channel under the Alumni Webinar Series playlist. So you can look for that in the next week to revisit this great content, share it with anyone who might be interested, and engage with other previous webinars that we've had. While I introduce Melanie today, I'd love to have everyone type in the chat box where you're joining us from. Melanie Vetter is a Smith College alumna, class of '80, transformative writing coach and storyteller. She coaches clients and workshop participants on how to use their stories to build resilience and find more joy in their lives through writing and reflecting on their unique stories. You can learn more about Melanie by visiting her website, Wellfleet Circle, and following her on Facebook and LinkedIn. I've just for all of you to know, also I've shared the link to her handout that I sent previously. So it's at the top of the chat box if you didn't get a chance to print it or if you want to just open it and follow along on your computer. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Melanie. Hi, Melanie.
Hello, how are you? Thank you, Lindsay, for that warm welcome. And welcome, I'm just watching this chat box at the bottom here. People are joining from all over, and that's very exciting. I saw somebody from Germany and somebody from Seattle, people from the East Coast. So yeah. welcome from all the different time zones.
So
and
fun.
I'm just thrilled to be here. So today we're going to be talking about using your stories and writing to build resilience and find joy in your life. And I just want to take 2 seconds more on the housekeeping and introductions before we dive in and let more people get caught up here. I see more people joining. So first of all, I did graduate from Smith College in 1980. I lived in Gardner House, and I was a math and philosophy major. But it was the literature classes that stuck with me. My best friend was an English major, and she would drag me to come with her to art history classes and literature classes and drama classes, and really expanded my learning. I was kind of focused before I met her sophomore year. And those literature classes really struck out a note with me. The stories that I read made me a lifelong reader, made me a lifelong lover of stories. And I also had an incredible grandfather who I think was the greatest storyteller ever. And so it's not surprising to me that I left my corporate attorney job to become a writing and storytelling coach. And in fact, what I say I do actually is that I'm a coach who uses story and writing to help my clients find resilience and joy. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a taste of it today. We're not going to do as much writing as you would do if you were working with me one-on-one or in one of my workshops, because we only have an hour. And but I'm going to give you time to write silently for a few minutes, several times. And at that point, I'm going to actually look at the chat. And actually, I'm going to see, Lindsay, right now I'm looking on my screen and I'm seeing your slide. Is there any way for me to see full picture of myself so that I'm not distracted by the words?
Oh, absolutely. Sorry about that.
Thank you. No worries. No worries.
Here you are.
I'm just watching the words there. So, okay, fantastic. So again, if you don't have the handout, you can grab it in the chat, but I don't want you to stress out if you don't have it. And if you don't, maybe you're listening on the phone or you don't have a printer, don't worry. You can grab a piece of paper, you can write notes on your phone. When we get to the exercises, I will read them out loud. So if you don't have the handout right now, not to worry. You can always come back and grab it later. You can, in fact, you could do the exercises over and over again. So you can grab that handout anytime. Okay, so let's just dive in. Reflecting on your stories is a great way, especially when you get curious and kind of mine those stories for nuggets, to figure out what you want more of in your life, and also what strengths you have, what strengths you already have that you can use when you hit a bump in the road. Stories are a great source of insight into both of those things, what you want and what you already have. And I am going to start with the part on resilience and the bumps in the road. I'm going to leave it's all fun stuff, but I'm going to leave the really fun stuff to the second half when we're going to talk about our ideal day and how to figure out how to include what more you want in your life on a daily basis. So I say resilience, and I think sometimes people think resilience, oh, I'm not resilient or I am resilient, but in fact, that's not really how resilience works. Resilience isn't a trait. It's not like I have blue eyes or I have brown eyes. Resilience is a collection of habits of mind, a collection of ways of acting, of ways of thinking, such as courage, connection, gratitude. I know people don't think gratitude is a way to find resilience, but in fact it is. Opening ourselves up to the positivity in our lives makes us able to handle the bumps better. But other things like persistence, grit, etc. So it's a whole series of different skills that we can learn and practice. And that's what I say when I say writing actually helps you become more resilient. By practicing those skills of, say, gratitude or grit or persistence, you can actually become better at them and become more resilient. Let me give you a kind of an analogy that I love, which is the pilot's checklist. So, if a pilot's flying and something happens, they don't say, oh, I wonder what I should do. They actually have a checklist. Landing gear doesn't come out, follow steps A through D, then follow steps E through G. If that doesn't work, they not only have that checklist, they actually practice it. They get into that simulator and they practice situations where they might be having a really big bump in the road. And that's how they develop those skills. They become almost automatic. So when you actually go through your stories and you look at times you have struggled and you figure out what you did that got you through, you're actually creating a list of skills that you can use when something similar happens. Let me give you actually a personal example from this summer. I actually had a kind of a rough summer. It started off with finding out that we had a major construction defect in our house. And we were told, you gotta move out. And I love where I live. I teach in person where I live. I have this lovely office where I live, but there was nothing we could do about it. And so my husband and I decided to drive cross country. We have a little house in Wellfleet, which is why I named my company Wellfleet Circle, because it's my happy place. So it wasn't so horrible. I got to go there. But the whole managing the construction 3,000 miles away was stressful. And then each of my parents had major medical problems in the summer at different times. So it felt like I was going from one crisis to another. And as a result, I felt overwhelmed. And I didn't like that feeling. And I decided I was going to use my own medicine. I was going to get curious about that overwhelm. And so I sat down and I wrote down, how does it feel when I get overwhelmed? what happens? And it actually was a physical feeling. I felt like bees were buzzing in my chest. And then I would get irritated and irritable. And if I didn't somehow manage to stop it, I would go to anger. And that's not a really fun way to be. And it's certainly not fun for the people around me. So then I tried to think about times when I had actually felt overwhelmed, but that I handled them better. And what I realized was that if I went and got outside, walked by the beach, went for a jog, went for a swim, read a really engaging, well-written book, got enough sleep, picked up the phone and called good friends and asked for some support. All of those things were things that really helped me. And so I created what I call my overwhelm cheat sheet. And I stuck it up on the wall. When I start to feel this way, here are things that I can do. I actually created a checklist. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but when you're in that moment of overwhelm or anger or, just feeling like you're out of control, you don't know what to do. But if you've got a cheat sheet right up there, you do. So that was one thing I did. And the other thing I realized was that in the past, I've been very successful in not feeling overwhelmed. I have a very busy life, but I don't usually get overwhelmed. And I look for clues of what set me off. And also what were other clues that were not in my body that I could say, okay, here it comes, go look at the checklist. One of them was I started to lose things, my phone, my glasses, the car keys, and I'm really organized. So I put things usually in the same place. But when I started to find those things missing, I said, oh, okay, what do I need to do? The other thing that I realized, and this was a huge realization and something that I spent a lot of time working on this summer, is that when I let my boundaries get porous, I go into overwhelm. And so by having better boundaries, I'm not being mean to the people who are asking me to do things. I'm actually being kind first to myself, but then also to other people, because if I'm not overwhelmed, I have way more capacity. So that's my little personal story about how I created this pilot checklist by writing down times that I was overwhelmed, times that I had overcome overwhelm, and what I could do to help myself. So I hope that is something that you would try, and we're going to do a little bit of that. We're going to do a writing exercise on when you struggle. And actually, let's go ahead and do that now. But before we start, I want to say something about diving into your stories of difficulties. And we're going to not go super deep today because A, we don't have a lot of time. And also, I'm not there to support you in person. I can read the chat, but actually I can't read the chat while I'm talking, but when you're writing, I will go and look and see if you have questions or comments, and I definitely welcome you to do that, and I will answer as many as I can. But before we dive into times that are where we struggled, I want to do a little exercise with you that I find helps keep me safe and my clients safe and prepare them to be in the right mode to deal with some difficult thoughts. So if you're someplace where you can close your eyes, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. Just relax your shoulders. Relax your jaw. And go ahead and feel your feet on the floor. Actually feel your body come out of your head a little bit. Now I want you to imagine places or people or ideas that make you feel centered, happy, tranquil. I call this my places of tranquility. For me, it's this little lake in Wellfleet. I can close my eyes and put myself there and I can calm myself down. It feels safe. I want you to think what it is for you. Is it a special person? Is it a pet? Is it a poem? It could be many things. Now I want you to really feel how you feel when you are thinking about your special tranquil place, person, idea. Take a couple of deep breaths again. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes and just jot yourself some notes. Is there a special place or a person or a few things, some ideas? And again, I'm not going to take you to a place where you're going to really need this, but I'm going to hope that you're going to actually use this, the handout again. And before you do it, just try to find a place of tranquility. And while you're writing, if you feel overwhelmed, just go back to it. Okay, so let's take a look at the handout. The first exercise is called A Time You Struggled. And the handout looks like this, but you could look at it online and just write on a piece of paper or in your phone, as I mentioned. But for those of you who don't have the handout, I am going to spend some time reading. And then when we go ahead and do some writing, I'm going to ask Lindsay to put up just a pretty picture, and I'm going to play a little bit of some music in the background. You don't have to listen. You can turn your sound down a little. I'll put it very lightly just to create some calm. So the first instruction is to think about a time you struggled. So what I'm going to ask you to find is not a big, huge struggle that you're going through right now, or even a really major struggle in the past. I'm going to ask you to find something that is resolved. Something that either the struggle's over or it doesn't hold a lot of negative feeling for you. Something that you've gotten through. So go ahead and find something that you can think of. And what I'm going to ask you to do is think back on a time you hit a roadblock in your life, or when something didn't go as planned, or you failed at a goal, or you were faced with a difficult time. Just go ahead and write a brief description. And Lindsay, if you would put up that slide now, that would be fantastic. And go ahead and take a few minutes now and write your description. Okay, so now that you have a brief description written, I'm going to ask you to examine it, to mine it for wisdom. So for those of you who don't have the handout, I'm going to read the instruction. What tools did you use? Here are some ideas to get you started. Did you use courage, compassion, calm, perseverance or grit, gratitude, connection, confidence, mindfulness, boundaries? Did you ask for help or find allies, or did you do something else? Okay, another couple minutes to write those pieces down for yourself. I'm not expecting you to write full sentences. I just want you to keep some notes for yourself about what you used that was effective. Okay, so you can do this, as I said, many times. And so if you didn't get to finish completely, that's okay. But what I'd like you to do now is I want you to reflect. Instead of thinking what went wrong, think about, what did I do right? What helped in the moment? What helped after? What did I learn or gain from this experience? What could I have done, if anything, to avoid the hard time or handled it with more ease? What could I do next time? And so our final little bit of writing here is to take your takeaways. What are your big takeaways? Did you have any aha moments? Do you have any tools that you use that were effective that you should pay attention to and write on your little list of in your mind or even on paper for next time this happens, this was a good tool that I can use. So go ahead and write for a few more minutes. Okay. I had a chance while you were writing to look at the chat, and Lisa asked, is there a sample of a pilot checklist or format that you can share? I don't have a sample, but I certainly could give you an idea of it and send it out to the group at some point this week. But basically, the pilot checklist is what we're doing right now. You're creating your list of things that help you. So I hope that answers your question, Lisa. By writing down all the things that help you and having these aha moments, you're creating your pilot checklist for yourself. And literally all I did was use a piece of, binder paper and write down all the things that I had identified as things that helped me avoid overwhelm and helped me get out of overwhelm, and just plastered it up on my wall. So I hope that answers your question. And I'd love if you would take a moment to share in the chat any aha moments you have, anything that helped you in your struggle, or any questions that you have about the exercise we just did before we move on. And I will look at the chat again in a bit, but Lindsay will also look, and if there are lots of questions, then I'm going to ask her to interrupt me and at some point, and we will answer them. I will get to the questions, I promise. Okay, Lindsay, if you want to go ahead and take down that slide, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so we talked about stories that were in the past. They weren't that big a struggle, and so, but sometimes we have stories that we get stuck on. So where we keep on thinking we've resolved the struggle, but then the story keeps coming up, and it keeps us stuck, or it has power over us over and over. So again, I'm going to share a personal story. Back in the early days of my corporate job, I didn't get a promotion that I wanted and that I felt that I deserved. I had worked for 7 years really hard. My clients liked me. I got great reviews. I never took a sick day. You get the gist. But then when it was time to get the promotion, I was told, not this year, maybe next year. And I thought to myself, no, I'm not sticking around for that. But it really hurt. And I had to shove that hurt down and figure out what was I going to do so that I didn't end up with a job that I was now pretty upset with, and that I ended up with a job that I really wanted. And fortunately, I ended up with a new job. And some great things happened, like clients offered references or contacts. I ended up getting another job that paid more. I got to travel, which was something that I really, really wanted to do and didn't get to do in my previous job. And it was all good. But yet, every time something happened where I felt like I wasn't doing something quite right, all of that shame and pain came roaring back. And I thought, I'm just not smart enough. I'm not good enough. And I'd have to shove it down again and move on because I had this very challenging job. And I wanted to do well in it. And I did. And I got promoted. And again, good things happened. Yet still this story stayed stuck, kept me stuck. I kept on thinking I wasn't good enough. Eventually, I left my corporate career and I decided to become a writing and storytelling coach. And in my training, I had to do all of the work that I do with my clients. And one of the classes was to write and reflect on stories of struggle. I bet you can guess what story I wrote about. And in writing it and looking at it from a different viewpoint, I started to think, okay, this wasn't a great situation, but I did a lot of things right. I asked for help. I held my head up and didn't badmouth the person I knew who had screwed me over. When I got to my new job, I came in with a lot of energy and engagement and excitement and got promoted. I made sure when I got a boss that was similar to the one I had had in the previous job that I asked for a transfer to a different boss who appreciated me and my creativity. And so after writing that story, I realized it wasn't my fault that this happened. I just came up against somebody who didn't like me and had veto power over my promotion. There was nothing I could have done more because I had done a great job in my job. And I stopped blaming myself. And that really was very therapeutic to have written that story and be able to move on. Now, I'm summarizing the whole process. It was a little longer than that, but it really is a powerful way of getting unstuck. Writing, reflecting, figuring out what you did right, forgiving yourself if you did something wrong. Self-compassion is an amazing piece of resilience, realizing that we do make mistakes, and often we beat ourselves up in a way we would never beat up our friends. And so one of the things that I did at the end of that process was write a letter of self-compassion, as if I was writing to my sister or my best friend who had gone through what I went through. And I wrote in loving tones, and it really helped heal that process. Now, I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna, because there are stories and there are struggles that just have no redemption. But we can still approach them in a way that makes us feel integrity and makes us feel like we've done the best we can in the situation. And my story kind of reminds me of a Mary Oliver quote, which I love, which I'll read to you. "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this too was a gift." And so now when I look back on what happened in my career, I think I wouldn't be here doing what I love if that bump in the road had not happened. I might still be there and not here. And I'm grateful that I'm here. So let me take a quick look at the chat and have a sip of water here and see if we have some comments. So here's some of the comments. Thank you, Deborah. Persevered, didn't let my emotions get away from me. I did the work that was needed, didn't let myself get bogged down by my emotions. Yeah, you kept your integrity. I can see that. That's really, and you can write your answers here if you want to. That was another question. Just so that other people see that one of the things that I think is really amazing. So that story I just told you about my career. So I teach a workshop at my local college, and one of the topics is career. And people said, "Oh, this is a really hard topic. You know, what am I going to write?" And I shared that story with them. And every single one of the people in the room said, "I have a story like that." So in sharing your aha moments, sharing your struggles, we stop feeling so alone in our struggle. And that's what's so wonderful about doing workshops with these tools. So those are just some ideas for you. So if you want to share, other people might get an aha moment from your sharing. So let's see if I can read a few more of these. I'm reminded of how much courage and grit that I have to get through difficult times. Awesome, Dina. Differentiating helps, seeing what was mine, what was not. Great. Kim says that she loved the Mary Oliver quote. I do too. Lisa said, it helped me to actually apply my values in practice. First, just refer to them as words. Oh, awesome. For example, interconnection is a value. Reaching out and realizing that I'm not alone in my struggle provides ongoing support to me. That is amazing. Yes, I totally agree. And you know, one of the things, I just actually wrote a blog post about how I love connecting with people, but for some reason when I'm feeling like really bad, I put this shell over myself. And I have to constantly remind myself that connection is just so important for struggle, and sharing your struggles, because we all have our struggles. And Jacqueline asks, I love your story and can easily relate. How do you get past the complex dopamine rush of indignation? Deep breathing. And you know what? Running. Again, I have my little checklist for overwhelm. It works pretty well for a lot of those things. But yeah, in the moment, it's really hard. It's really hard. Now, that story that I just told you happened to me many years ago. So it no longer has any power over me. It doesn't have a sting. But there are things that happen all the time where you just, I don't know, think of them. You just, you got to take it out and look at it again, and it bothers you and bothers you. So yeah, finding ways in which you can get through it and not let the, dopamine, the excess dopamine of modern life, connection up serotonin. That's how to really balance the excess of dopamine. Thank you, Dina. That's a great idea. Yes, and in fact, that's what I mean by using gratitude. Gratitude is an amazing way, just even thinking, what did I achieve today? Some small little piece ups your serotonin, helps calm you down, really makes you feel alive and happy. Okay, thank you so much for participating in the chat. And I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about our next topic, which is your ideal day. How to use your story to make sure that you are doing what you want in your life. And obviously we can't always control what's going on everywhere in our life, but we can still add little bits of important things that we can add in to make our lives feel authentic and ours, and feel more ideal. So there's a second page here on the ideal life, which we're going to do in a second. And I will read it again for those of you who don't have the handout. But I want to tell you a story about one of my clients, Susan. So I asked her to do this ideal day exercise. And basically the ideal day is to write down what you would be doing from morning to night if you could live your ideal day. And I mean fantasize, just make it up, whatever it is. So that was the first prompt, and she sat down and she wrote for a while. And then we looked at what she wrote as she read it to me. And lo and behold, Susan wanted to be in wilderness all day long. And I'm not talking about she wanted to be in the park or even in the woods. She wanted to be in pristine wilderness where nobody else was. But Susan has 2 young children and a house, and that wasn't really going to happen right now. And so I asked her to sit down and write some more. What is it about that pristine wilderness that she's really yearning for? She wrote, and she came back and she said, I want that feeling of awe, that feeling of being part of something bigger than myself. And honestly, I want a little quiet, which I had to laugh at, having 3 kids, and I understood she has young kids. She wanted a little quiet in her life. So then I asked her to do a third prompt, which is, how can you bring that awe and quiet into your life in a small way every day, so that each day feels like you're honoring what you really are longing for? And she thought about it, and she said, when I drop my kids off at school, there's actually a creek nearby. And I could walk down the path to the creek and look up at the redwoods and feel that feeling of awe. I don't know, I live in Northern California, and I can look up at the redwoods as well. And when I look up at them, I feel awe. I feel part of something greater than myself, and they are just so beautiful and majestic. So I could understand what she meant by that. And she would just go and look at the trees. And then there was a rock by the creek. And she said I could sit there and I could read a book that I really love, or I could just meditate, or I could write, or I could just be. This takes all of 15 minutes. And she said, instead of driving my kids to school and running back to my home office to get to work, If I take that pause every morning, I'm honoring who I am and what I really want. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And I have to admit, I borrowed what she said. I live near a redwood grove at the creek, and I don't do it every day, but a lot of days I start my day by going out and doing just that. And it is an incredible way to start my day on the right foot. So I want you to find something like that that you can add just into your day every day that honors what your ideal day would look like. So let's go ahead and pull up that handout again, the one that looks like this. And it says, your ideal day. Imagine your ideal day. What would you do from the time you wake up until the time you go to bed? Where would you be? Who would you be with? What would you do? How would you like to feel? What would you not do? Very important. Remember, this is fantasy. You can dream. Take a moment to brainstorm some ideas. And Lindsay, if you would put up that second slide, that would be amazing. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you to reflect on what you just wrote. What does each thing or the day as a whole tell you about what really matters to you? And when I asked that question, let me give you a little example. So I have one client who talked about, she had done study abroad her junior year in Paris. And she kept on saying, well, I really want to go to Paris. I really want to go to Paris. But when she actually wrote the story of going to Paris, what she realized was what she was longing for was what she had then, which was time to sit in cafes, time to go to museums, time to meet new people. And it wasn't so much Paris itself as those ideas. So that's what I mean by, you might have this dream of going back and living in Paris, but really when you get down to it, it might be about something else. So what does each thing or the day as a whole tell you about what really matters to you? Why do you want those things in your life? What does your ideal day story tell you about what you need more of? And what's getting in your way of putting more of that into your life right now? So go ahead and reflect on those things and then write some of your takeaways, things that you want, things that are keeping you stuck, things that you could add in each day. Whatever comes to mind, I want you to write them down in the box. I'm going to give you another 2 minutes for that. And then I'm hoping that some of you will share in the chat. So if you're finished writing, go ahead and share either something about your ideal day, what it stands for you, why it matters, why you want those things, what do you need more of, what's holding you back. Any of those things, go ahead and write in the chat and share with your fellow webinar folks. Okay, so I'll give you a couple minutes there. Actually, I'm going to give you 3 so you have some time to write in the chat as well. So I'm loving reading the comments in the chat. So I'm just gonna read some of these, and you all can read them as well. So some of them, let's see, a lot of I want more time for myself, or even if I'm doing so, and then desiring less busyness, and the idea that what you could do is add some of these things in a more intentional way to the schedule, so you make sure you get them done. One person, Aviva says, my ideal day involves a lot of outdoor time and nature and snuggles with my kids. Oh, that sounds great. But she says, my real day involves a hurried urban life. I love your thought. The best I can do is more trips to the park instead of concrete playgrounds. Maybe some nature sounds on my computer. Absolutely. And, our idea of nature doesn't have to be just that pristine wilderness. It could just be the flowers that somebody's planted around their tree in the urban environment. I grew up in New York City, and I still found, well, I was lucky. I lived near Washington Square Park, and so I got to look at the trees every day. And that was just that little boost of nature that I really was craving. So I hope you find that, Aviva. Susan's says she's really doing a lot of her ideal day already. And I love that you write gratitudes in your journal every morning. That's an incredibly wonderful way of opening yourself up to the good, which it rewires our brain towards positivity, which helps us get through bumps in the road. So beautiful. Yeah, Corinne says, some of the things I want most in my ideal day just need to be scheduled in advance. Absolutely. Make them priorities, get them on your schedule so you don't find you get to the end of the day and they haven't happened. Amy says, my ideal day was full of adventure as well as time for myself. I'm feeling stuck in a job that doesn't fulfill me, and I'm feeling really ready for a professional shift that will align more with my values. Beautiful. And I love the idea I love that you brought up the idea of values. And I'm going to talk a little bit in a moment about energy and engagement and how they are a great way of figuring out what your values are. And the exercise in the guide, the free guide that you can sign up for, is all about energy engagement and alignment with values. So Amy, go ahead and grab that. And I'd love to hear what you think when you're done with it and whether it was helpful. A lot of these nature. You guys are definitely with me. Walking or hiking in nature with family or close friends, delicious food, nutritious. Letty, ideal day, pray. Yes, giving thanks. Praying is a really great way. It's like meditation in terms of what it can do for us in terms of our nervous system. Great idea. Self-care. Absolutely. Planning for connection, obstacles, anxiety, confidence, feeling like I should be doing something more productive. Yeah, boy, that for those of us, we all went to Smith College. We're, driven women, and we think we have to be productive every moment. But the reality is that we don't, that actually resting and being in nature and taking time for self-care makes us more productive. So I hope you give yourself that, Lisa. What's getting in my way? My phone. Yes, I think a lot of us can relate to that. Yeah, Kim says, yes, Jacqueline, that was my thought too. I wish I could move to a village and grow my own vegetables. So, okay, so think about what is that you're yearning and see whether that you can find something that you can do in your day. My daughter grows vegetables in little pots in her room. So, just see how you can honor that. Wow, there are so many unbelievable messages here. Lindsay, is it possible for people to see this chat after after we're done? So they can read each other's?
Yeah, absolutely. I can download the chat and share it with everyone afterwards. So that's a great
wonderful.
idea.
Yeah, because I do want to spend a few minutes on energy and engagement, because it did come up there, and it's something that I think is really a fabulous way. Sometimes we don't even know what we want. So So thank you all for really sharing so beautifully. I love this. I love that seeing that there's some conversations even happening here in the chat. So I'm going to let Lindsay share that with you, and then if you wouldn't mind putting me back on the screen, that would be awesome. Wonderful. So I said I wanted to talk about energy and engagement. So this is something that I think is when you're not sure exactly what it is that you want in your life. One thing to think about is what makes you energized and what keeps you engaged. So when I say engaged, I'm going to go with that one first because I get this, it happens to me. Time just seems to disappear. I'm doing something and 4 hours goes by. I don't notice anything. That means that I am fully engaged in what I'm doing. And that's a clue to me that it's something important. It's something that I enjoy. It's something that feels right with me. And so I want you to start noticing things where time just moves, and and when you're done, you don't feel exhausted. Same thing with energized. So when you're something that you do and you just feel energized after you do it. As I mentioned, there's a handout that you can grab. It's about finding your values and exploring energized and engagement, energy and engagement. And one of the things I say in there, and I'll tell you now, is that there's a difference between being good at something and being energized by it. So when I say that, let me give you an example. I am really good at organizing closets, figuring out what furniture should go, how rooms fit together. But after I do something like that, I am exhausted. It's something I'm good at, but it doesn't energize me. So should I be adding more or less of that into my life? I think I should add less of that because it saps my energy. And sure, if my daughter says, can you please help me figure out how to reorganize my room, I'm going to say yes, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time in my house figuring out how to reorganize my furniture. It just isn't something that's going to make me feel energized. It's not part of what I want in my day. The furniture can stay as it is. So that's something that I think is really important to pay attention to. And your ideal day kind of gives you an idea of what makes you feel engaged and energized. So my homework for you is to spend a little bit of time each day figuring out what makes me feel energized, what makes me feel engaged. How can I honor that in my day? Even if I can't sit around and read a book in the middle of the day, can I take 10 minutes at lunch to read a book, or 10 minutes to listen to the podcast that has nothing to do with my work? How can you add just little micro doses of things that make you feel alive into your day each day? And writing about those things may help you figure out more things to do. So I think we've run out of time here, and I just want to take a moment to thank you so much for being here, for listening, for participating. And oh, thank you, Susan. Susan said this hour made me feel energized. I love that you just made my day. And I do encourage you, and I think Lindsay put in the chat the link to the free guide. I encourage you to go ahead and grab it, because it is all about thinking about what do you truly value, how do you add more of that into your life. And if you're interested in, I have a ton of free resources on my website and my blog. Every other week I send out a Write With Me, which have some of the very same types of exercises that we did today. There are tons of them. They're all free. And then I write a blog in the intervening weeks on the topics. I also do workshops. In fact, one coming up next Wednesday on gratitude. And how to, and not just the kind of gratitude of thanking people or gratitude for ourselves, but opening ourselves up to positivity as a way of developing more resilience and therefore being more able to deal with bumps in the road. So And I'm reading these wonderful comments. Thank you so much for being here. Please reach out. You have my email on the handout. I think there's going to be another email sent to you. Please email me questions, comments. You need resources. That's what I'm here for. It's what I love to do, and I hope we get to connect again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. This is wonderful. I love seeing the responses too. And I'm going to share the chat with everyone. I'm going to get the recording posted on YouTube so that you can revisit it and share it. And look for an email that will come out tomorrow, everyone, with the links that Melanie had mentioned. But thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks so much for all your support.
Have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.